Salma Hayek, a name that means peace in Arabic, yet her life has never been calm. To survive in the dazzling but ruthless world of Hollywood, where Latin women are often confined by invisible limits, Salma Hayek had to fight without rest, against condescension for her origins, against the weight of prejudice, and against the powers ready to crush vulnerable women. People admire her beauty, but few know the strength behind it. A resilient spirit and a fearless voice that stood at the forefront of the Me Too movement and the fight for women's rights. The journey of that stubborn Mexican girl, from being mocked for her early roles to becoming Marvel's superhero Ajax, stands as her most powerful answer to every doubt that ever surrounded her life. And in the next part of this story, you'll see what the spotlight tried to hide: the wounds, the losses, and the defining moments that shaped the Salma Hayek the world only thinks it understands. Salma Valgarma Hayek Jimenez was born on September 2, 1966, in Coatzacoalcos, a sun-soaked coastal city in Veracruz, Mexico. She was the only daughter of Sami Hayek Dominguez, a successful Lebanese-Mexican oil executive, and Diana Jimenez Medina, an opera singer and vocal coach who filled their home with art and music. On the surface, Salma's childhood looked like a turquoise dream, the sea surrounding her days, the laughter of neighborhood children echoing through the streets, long afternoons, playing soccer on the hot sand. But behind that bright picture was the quiet battle of a little girl who never seemed to fit into the world around her. From an early age, Salma Hayek struggled with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and dyslexia, two invisible chains that turned every page into a maze, every lesson into a sentence. She misspelled words, read slower than others, her mind wandering while classmates stayed focused. Then came the judgments, sharp as hail. She's lazy. She's not smart. She's distracted. No one saw that behind every bad grade was a night she cried herself to sleep, not from failure, but from trying her hardest and still being seen as one. At 12, her parents sent her to the Academy of the Sacred Heart, a strict Catholic girls' school in Grand Coteau, Louisiana. They hoped discipline would shape her into a model young lady, but instead of conforming, Salma became more rebellious, mischievous, defiant, creating imaginary adventures right there in class. The nuns didn't see a restless artist yearning for freedom. They saw a troublemaker. Less than a year later, Salma Hayek was expelled for being incompatible with school discipline. That moment cut deep. It planted in her the belief that the world had no place for those who were different, and that if she wanted to survive, she would have to carve out her own. No one would set expectations or lead the way for her. And there in Mexico, in that loneliness, a quiet decision began to form. She would never again let anyone tell her she couldn't. She would prove that what looked like a weakness today could one day become her strength. No one knew then that the girl expelled for being unruly would one day make the whole world rise to its feet and applaud. If childhood was where Salma Hayek learned to defy expectations, then her 20s were when she chose to confront destiny head-on. While studying at Universidad Iberoamericana, a prestigious institution many dreamed of attending, Salma felt trapped in a gilded box. She majored in international relations, the path her family expected of her, yet every day she secretly gambled her heart on acting classes. She never said it aloud, but deep inside she knew. The stage was where she truly belonged. At 18, Salma seized her first opportunity, playing Princess Jasmine in a children's production of Aladdin. It should have been the perfect dream for a young girl in love with art. But reality was the opposite. Chaotic, disrespectful. No one cared how a young actress felt. After each scene, Salma wanted to run backstage and hide her tears. She later recalled, "It was a professional nightmare. I thought, maybe I made the wrong choice." The excitement of her first spotlight turned into deep doubt about the very dream she had been chasing. But the resilient Salma didn't give up. She kept pushing through every early setback. Just a year later, in 1989, she stunned Mexico with her breakout role as Teresa in the hit telenovela of the same name. Her character, innocent yet calculating, captivated an entire nation. At 22, Salma stood at the summit, adored by the press, surrounded by sponsorship deals, her name chanted by millions. And yet, in the midst of fame and admiration, she felt an unsettling emptiness. Is this all there is? Or am I just a tool for someone else's profit? That question pushed her into the boldest adventure of her life. In the early 1990s, Salma arrived in Los Angeles, at first just for a short break. But Hollywood pulled her in as if fate had been waiting. After countless talks with people in the business, she realized a painful truth. Mexican cinema was fading. If she wanted to make films, not just appear in them, she would have to leave. She would have to give up everything and start from zero. So she stayed in the U.S. That decision hit Mexican media like a bomb. The same newspapers that once praised her turned their backs overnight, branding her with cruel labels, traitor of Mexican showbiz, trying to Americanize herself, chasing a Hollywood illusion. Some even mocked that she no longer represented Latin beauty, simply because she dared to cross the borders they wanted her trapped within. The moment she set foot in America, Salma Hayek realized survival here would be anything but easy. Hollywood, the dream of millions, felt to her like a door firmly shut. They scrutinized her accent, her dark Latin features, her name that no one could pronounce right. During early auditions, humiliation came without mercy. "Are you here to play the maid?" A single question, but sharp enough to cut through the heart of a star once celebrated in her homeland. Salma stood tall, but inside, her chest tightened as if crushed by an unseen hand. In Mexico, they said she'd betrayed her roots for an illusion. In Hollywood, she was treated as nothing more than shattered dust along the boulevard of fame, rejected by the place that once loved her, humiliated by the place she longed to belong. Where did she belong? Nowhere. But Salma swallowed her anger, refused to complain, and chose silence, a silence filled with determination. She worked harder, studied more, and pushed herself further, determined to prove that Mexican women were not born to stand behind anyone. If Hollywood closed its doors, she would break them down. If they said she only fit supporting roles, she would make them write a leading one for her. Salma turned to Stella Adler, the legendary teacher who had trained icons like Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro to relearn acting from scratch, like a nameless beginner. But while her classmates read scripts fluently in their native tongue, she had to battle each line, her dyslexia turning every word into a maze. ADHD tugged at her focus with the slightest noise. She wasn't just learning to act. She was learning to tame her own body. It was a war no one else could see. At night, in a tiny room where she sometimes couldn't afford to turn on the heat, Salma would ask herself, if she quit tomorrow, would anyone in Hollywood even remember she had ever existed? Then she'd wipe her tears, look into the mirror, and answer with red, unyielding eyes. I'm not afraid of being the last to arrive. I'm only afraid of never being recognized for what I'm truly capable of. I'm afraid people think I'm famous only because I make them money. I'm afraid I'm not good enough, Salma once confessed. But that very fear became the fuel that drove her out of bed every morning, to fight again. No longer the naive Princess Jasmine from that children's play, Salma had become the silent warrior of her own life. Through sweat, humiliation, and relentless effort, she was forging herself, preparing for the moment when the whole world would have no choice but to stand up and take notice. Salma Hayek was never a lucky star handed easy opportunities. She was the kind who had to fight for every role, every minute of screen time in an industry never built for someone like her. Her first major turning point came with Desperado, 1995, when director Robert Rodriguez cast her as Carolina, the sharp, fearless lover of El Mariachi, Antonio Banderas. It was the first time Salma had ever been given a leading role in a Hollywood film. But that opportunity nearly cost her everything. One crucial scene, an intimate moment between the two leads, had not been in the original script. After Columbia Pictures saw the chemistry between Salma and Banderas during auditions, the studio demanded that a love scene be added. Salma was shocked and objected. She had never filmed a nude or intimate scene and felt her consent being stripped away. But the system didn't wait for emotions. She was told the scene was mandatory. Rodriguez tried to reassure her. Banderas offered support. But Salma broke down. She couldn't remove her towel, couldn't perform naturally, fear of losing control tightening like a fist around her chest. The scene, planned for 1 hour, dragged on for 8. She thought she'd be fired. Rodriguez later admitted, "It was the hardest scene in the film not because of the technique, but because of the emotional pain Salma went through." Beyond the pressures of that moment, Salma also faced cultural and linguistic isolation. Even though Desperado was shot in Mexico, the atmosphere was pure Hollywood, fast, cold, and unforgiving. For Salma, acting in Desperado wasn't just performance. It was survival. From a beloved Mexican TV star, she had been pushed back to square one. From a woman with a voice, she had to learn to reclaim it in a world that never meant to give her one. When the film became a success and her name began to rise, few knew what she had endured to get there. But success didn't bring peace. After Desperado, the challenges came faster and harder. In From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996, Salma played Satanico Pandemonium, the hypnotic dancer in a vampire bar. One of the film's pivotal scenes required her to dance with a live python coiled around her body. What no one knew was that Salma suffered from severe ophidiophobia, a deep fear of snakes that triggered panic at even the sight of them. When she accepted the role, she hadn't been told about the scene. It was added after the contract was signed. She refused and asked for it to be changed. Quentin Tarantino, the film's writer and her scene partner, replied coldly, "If you don't do it, we'll replace you." There was no time to prepare, no stunt double. Only her and a python, more than 2 meters long, coiled around her shoulders. She danced while trembling, her body and eyes frozen in fear. The camera captured a seductive goddess before the crowd. But behind that image was a woman holding herself together against terror. The scene would go on to become a pop culture icon. Salma had conquered her deepest fear to complete something that seemed beyond human endurance. Afterward, the world hailed her as Hollywood's new sex symbol, a title she never took pride in. Salma once said, "I don't mind being called attractive, but if that's all they see in me, then it's not worth everything I've sacrificed." That dance with the snake didn't just expose Hollywood's shallow gaze toward Latina actresses. It revealed her true strength, a woman who could be afraid and still refuse to back down. No retreat, no surrender. From that seemingly small moment, Salma Hayek began rebuilding a new definition. Beauty isn't just in how you look, it's in the limits you dare to break to be seen for who you truly are. Step by step, she carved her path through Fools Rush In, Dogma, Wild Wild West. But all of it was only preparation for the most important creation of her life, Frida. For Salma Hayek, Frida was more than a film. It was a battle. 8 relentless years fighting inside a system that treated women like her as outsiders, where their voices were often silenced before they could even speak. Beginning in 1994, Salma pursued the project with a single conviction. If anyone could bring Frida Kahlo's life to the screen with absolute respect and honesty, it had to be a woman, and it had to be her. She traveled across Mexico herself to secure the rights from Dolores Olmedo, persuaded Alfred Molina to play Diego Rivera through an appeal to artistic understanding rather than money, and invited director Julie Taymor, a strong woman capable of holding her hand through the storm. Salma raised funds from studios that didn't believe a film about a Mexican female artist could sell tickets. She proved them wrong. But when the project landed at Miramax, Salma faced an enemy larger than any on-screen villain: the abuse of power by Harvey Weinstein. In a shocking piece for the New York Times, Salma described suffocating months, being pulled off publicity events, humiliated publicly, and subjected to inhumane conditions simply to keep the film alive. "I will make you fail," he reportedly snarled. "Don't think I can't do it." Bizarre demands and terrifying coercions came like psychological knives. Shower together, massages, sex. And when she refused, more scenes demanded, rewrites imposed, orders to bring in more stars, all unpaid, a never-ending mental torture. The climax of that horror was an intimate scene not in the script, to shoot with another woman, to strip away every defense. The night before filming, Salma convulsed with tension and vomited from fear. Yet she rose. She took tranquilizers, closed her eyes, and completed the scene. Not because she wanted to, but because if she stopped, Frida would collapse with her. And then the miracle happened. The film survived and triumphed. With a budget of $12 million, Frida grossed over $56.3 million worldwide, expanding from 5 theaters to 794, and lasting more than 8 weeks at each venue. An extraordinary feat for an art house biopic. In Mexico, Frida earned $3.59 million, the joyful applause of a nation celebrating 2 of its strongest women. And then came what no one had dared to dream: 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Actress for Salma Hayek, marking the first time in nearly half a century that a Mexican woman stood at the threshold of Hollywood's highest honor. A moment so unreal that even Salma had to clench her fists to believe it wasn't a dream. But her greatest victory wasn't on the Oscar stage. It was in Awakening. Men sexually harass because they can. Women speak out today because finally we can, Salma wrote, in what became a declaration for an entire generation. From the battle that made Frida, Salma Hayek emerged not as an actress trying to find a place, but as a woman creating one, for herself and for others. After Frida, Salma no longer lived to survive. She lived to choose. Once upon a time in Mexico, savages, ask the dust, laughing through grown-ups, fighting in the hitman's bodyguard and the hitman's wife's bodyguard, lending her voice to Puss in Boots. Yet her most triumphant return came from a world that, for decades, had closed its doors to women like her. Marvel Studios, Eternals, 2021, and Salma Hayek, at 55, donned the mantle of a superhero. Not a damsel to be saved, not a side character, a leader, Ajak, the face of a community Hollywood once pretended not to see. "I'm doing this not just for myself," she said. "I'm doing it for the kids who were told their heritage wasn't worthy of being heroic." Alongside her acting career, Salma founded Ventana Rosa, a production company dedicated to films about women, Latin voices, and forgotten communities. She has been named one of people's 50 most beautiful multiple times. Time honored her among the 100 most influential people in the world. France awarded her the Legion of Honor. And in 2021, her star was unveiled on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a testament that perseverance and courage always, eventually, earn their rightful reward. The peak of fame didn't bring the peace Salma Hayek once hoped for. After Frida, after the dazzling glow of the Oscars, people assumed she had entered the happiest chapter of her life. But deep inside, Salma later admitted, "I had never felt so fragile." Before finding serenity with her current husband, she had to walk alone through the long, cold years behind the spotlight, where fame can be lonelier than any empty room. Fans saw a radiant star, but few knew that behind every red carpet smile was a heart quietly asking, "Will anyone ever love me for who I am, or only for the name Salma Hayek?" The first man who came into her life during that search for trust was Edward Atherton. In 1997, he left England for Los Angeles to be with her, a gesture both romantic and selfless. For 2 years, their relationship had no scandal, no darkness, but also not enough gravity to endure. When they parted, Atherton said gently, "Whenever possible, we stay in touch." A kind farewell, but one that mirrored a painful truth. Sometimes love arrives at the right person but the wrong time. And for the first time, Salma understood. Kindness alone can't keep two people together. But the real heartbreak began when she fell in love with Edward Norton, the brilliant actor once hailed as Hollywood's golden boy. They met through a shared chiropractor, a coincidence that felt like destiny. From 1999 to 2003, they were one of Hollywood's most admired couples. Yet, behind the glamour was a pact of silence. "We did thousands of things together and nobody ever knew," Salma said. "It was like I was living 2 lives at once." A quiet confession, heavy with ache, because love that must stay hidden too tightly often loses the warmth that keeps two hearts close. In the end, news of their breakup was accidentally leaked by Salma's 11-year-old co-star in Spy Kids 3D, an unexpected slip that revealed the quiet end of what had seemed like an unshakable love. Only then did the public realize that their once perfect romance had shattered into private fragments known only to the two of them. Then came Josh Lucas, the man with a smile warm as sunlight, the kind of warmth that made Salma believe for the first time in years that she could stop being on guard. They met when both were learning how to love life again. Josh didn't make her hide or pretend to be strong. With him, Salma could laugh loudly, argue fiercely, and lean her tired head on his shoulder to breathe. They once believed love alone would be enough, but real life doesn't work on wishes. When Salma went off to film in South Africa and Josh was tied up on set in Australia, the distance slowly tore apart what both had tried to hold together. "We broke up because we couldn't be together," Josh said softly. And it was that very gentleness that broke Salma's heart. Because sometimes love doesn't end from lack of feeling, but from the impossibility of touch. Looking back, Salma said a single line that every woman who's had to be strong for too long would understand. When you're lonely for too long, you start seeing the good in people who aren't right for you. It wasn't blame. It was a raw confession of the emptiness that had lived inside her for years. To outsiders, Salma was dazzling amid Hollywood's lights. But there were nights when the doors closed, the lights went out, and she was just a woman sitting across from herself, trying not to cry, afraid the sadness might fill the whole house. From each heartbreak, she didn't hide the pain. She let it teach her that a heart doesn't need to be perfect to love again. And those quiet scars were what prepared her for the next chapter. Meeting François-Henri Pinault, a man who didn't make her shine brighter for the world, but made her feel seen, respected, and safe to be herself. With him, Salma finally understood. Love isn't a performance for applause. It's that rare, gentle moment when a woman who's fought all her life can finally let her shoulders rest and whisper, "I've found true happiness." All of Salma's doubts about love began to change in 2006, when she met François-Henri Pinault, the French businessman, chairman of the Kering Group, the man behind the world's most coveted luxury brands. Their love didn't burst like fireworks. It arrived slowly, like a warm breeze passing through the life of a woman long exhausted by imperfect romances. They loved each other like two people who knew too well what it meant to lose, and how precious it was to hold on. Salma once said what moved her wasn't his power or wealth. It was the way Pinault looked at her, the gaze of a man who saw a strong soul trying hard to pretend she was fine. But fate was never simple for Salma. In 2007, at the age of 41, she became pregnant. Something doctors had told her was nearly impossible. Her daughter, Valentina Paloma, was born that September, a miracle Salma believed she had waited half her life to receive. Yet even the greatest joy came with fear, just as great. Only months later, in July 2008, when the world expected a fairy tale wedding, Salma abruptly called off the engagement. The tabloids speculated endlessly. Some said they clashed over traditions. Others that Pinault's lavish lifestyle overwhelmed her. But the truth stayed quietly between them, within the heart of a woman who had been hurt too often, asking herself, "Is this love truly safe? Does he love me? Or the idea of me?" Then, as every beautiful story deserves a gentle turn, just 7 months later, on Valentine's Day 2009, they secretly married in Paris. No million-dollar gown, no paparazzi lenses, just two people looking into each other's eyes and deciding that this time they would see it through. Salma could not have more children after Valentina, but she found another way to build a bigger family than her heart had ever imagined, by opening her arms to Pinault's 3 children from previous relationships, loving them as if they had been born from her own body. For Salma, motherhood was never about blood. It was about the choice to keep loving every single day. Though she is married to a billionaire, Salma Hayek has never relied on anyone to exist. No prenuptial agreement. No surrendering her career. No trade-off of her independence. "I like the pressure of making money," she once said in an interview, smiling with equal parts pride and mischief. "And now, I want to make even more." Pinault loves that about her, a spirit that refuses to bow to anyone, not even to her own happiness. He once said that her work ethic was incredibly seductive, a compliment Salma treasures more than any diamond she has ever received. Yet Hollywood's spotlight always hungers for something to gossip about. People asked Salma how she could ever know who truly loved her, someone both famous and wealthy. She answered softly, "What scares me most isn't being poor, but having someone love me only for what I have." That's why, on social media, she keeps everything as real as possible. Unedited family photos, simple everyday moments, the candid smile when silver strands of hair glint in the sunlight. For her 15th wedding anniversary in 2024, Salma wrote, "There are no words to describe the joy of finding your other half. To those who have found it, never take it for granted. To those who haven't, never give up." Because in the end, Salma Hayek's journey of triumph doesn't close with applause on a red carpet. but with a home where she can take off her armor, breathe slowly, and hold the hand of the one she loves in peace. With her daughter Valentina, Salma is both firm and gentle, like a tree that shelters but always lets its child grow toward the light. She refuses to let Valentina have a phone early, even when all her friends do, because Salma knows too well how cruel the world can be to a child born under the spotlight. I want her to learn to wish for something and wait patiently for the right time, she said. But Salma never forces her daughter to become the image the public expects. She lets Valentina make mistakes, rise again, and choose her own path. Amid whispers that the girl has inherited fame rather than talent, Salma quietly walks beside her, encouraging her to explore her passions, and together, they're nurturing a small business project. It's her way of handing her daughter the key to the future, not a shortcut built on her name. Salma Hayek never waited for anyone to rescue her from loneliness or pain. When she loved wrongly, she left. When she met the right person, she stayed. All of it was her choice. With no illusions about the fairy tale romances Hollywood paints, Salma loved with the clear-eyed caution of someone who has suffered losses, yet still believes the heart can heal if she does not give up. She became a mother when it seemed impossible. She married without trading away her freedom. A woman who earns from her own intellect and labor was still willing to share her life with a man, not to be protected, but to be stronger together. But even with success, love, and family on her side, Salma Hayek could not escape the pains and difficulties that fame brings. She was never embroiled in scandals that destroyed a career, but the controversies that surrounded her were enough to show that the life of an icon is not a sunlit stroll. When the Me Too movement erupted, Salma was among the first women to stand up and tell the painful truth about her experience with a powerful figure in Hollywood. A story hard to speak and even harder to accept. There were times her silence raised questions. There were remarks that silenced entire rooms. There were events that polarized and sparked debate. But not every darkness in Salma Hayek's life belonged to the past. In 2017, when the Me Too storm tore away Hollywood's veil of silence, Salma stepped forward, not as a powerful star, but as a woman who had been humiliated to the core. In a shocking essay published in the New York Times, she recounted Harvey Weinstein's threats to destroy careers, his insults, coercions, and even the cold whisper, "I will kill you. Don't think I can't do it." The coerced nude scene in Frida, a scene that was never in the script, pushed her to the brink. She took tranquilizers and vomited before filming, trembling like a small bird stripped of defenses. Later, she wrote, "I felt as if people did not want to hear my story because I was nobody." And yet, Salma still spoke. And when other women began to come forward after her, the world finally understood. Their silence had never been consent. It had been survival. But life doesn't only test us through righteous battles. Sometimes, the harshest blows come from the very hands we thought would support us. In 2024, a short clip from a Balenciaga show went viral. Nicole Kidman walked past Salma without stopping for a photo together. Instantly, social media exploded with rumors. The friendship between Hollywood's two queens is over. The women later clarified it was simply a misunderstanding amid backstage chaos. Yet once again, Salma was reminded how a single frozen moment could erase years of genuine friendship. A far more serious blow came in 2022 when Balenciaga, a brand under her husband's company, became embroiled in a disturbing ad scandal involving children. The public expected Salma to speak as boldly as she had for women's rights. But this time, she remained silent. That silence, whether born of caution or helplessness, disappointed many. A feminist icon suddenly found herself caught in the narrow gap between justice and family. Earlier, at Sundance 2017, during a panel on race and gender equality, Salma had unintentionally interrupted Black actress Jessica Williams. One misplaced sentence was enough to ignite a wave of criticism. Salma later apologized, explaining that her frustration with the system had made her momentarily forget those fighting beside her. But audiences only saw the moment, not the context, and they judged. Looking back, one could say Salma Hayek has made mistakes, but one could also say she has lived with the courage of someone willing to stand at the very center of the storm. She never avoided complexity. She never reduced her life to a simple version that pleased the crowd. She fought, and sometimes fighting means being hurt, being misunderstood. But if a woman still stands tall after all of that, what do we call her? A victim? A warrior? Or a legend learning to forgive herself? For Salma Hayek, the answer has always been, I'm still here, and I will never be silent again. Salma Hayek didn't just open the door for Latina women in Hollywood, she shattered the invisible barriers that had long confined them to forgettable supporting roles. With her unapologetically Mexican accent, proud brown skin, and a name once dismissed as unmarketable, Salma stepped onto the stage of a world that never wanted her there and forced it to change its view. From outsider to trailblazer, she proved that the worth of a Latina woman isn't defined by sensuality, but by her right to tell her own story. And that story's most powerful chapter bears one name: Frida. When she became Frida Kahlo, Salma wasn't just acting, she was giving history back a voice it had ignored. For the first time in nearly half a century, a Mexican actress was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress. But that recognition was only the surface of a cultural earthquake. A Latina woman, both in front of and behind the camera, telling a story about pain, politics, love, and resilience. About an artistic icon who, like her, was Mexican. There was no gilding, no attempt to make the story easier to swallow for mainstream audiences, only raw truth and the courage to reveal it. Salma's influence stretches far beyond the screen. She co-founded Chime for Change, joined forces with UNICEF and numerous global organizations to fight for the rights of women and girls, those born without the privilege of having their voices heard. She has traveled to war zones and impoverished communities, carrying a single message wherever she goes: human dignity does not depend on where you are born. When Hollywood trembled under the weight of the Me Too movement, Salma didn't step forward to seize the spotlight. She stepped forward to light it for others. Her essay in the New York Times, where she recounted being harassed, threatened, and humiliated by Harvey Weinstein, became one of the most painful personal manifestos of its time. She confessed that her deepest wound wasn't fear. It was the feeling that she was not important enough to be heard. And yet, she told her story, and that truth seemed to change the rules of the game. Doors that had long been locked suddenly swung open, not with a roar, but with a voice steady, calm, and unwilling to surrender. Even in her private life, Salma has fought in her own quiet way, refusing to hide from age, to undergo cosmetic surgery, or to dye her hair to disguise time. In a Hollywood obsessed with youth, she appears before more than 20 million followers online. Silver strands glinting in her hair, smiling contentedly as if to declare, I am beautiful, in my own way. And just like that, she ignited a silent revolution. The honors that followed were not acts of favor, but inevitabilities. Her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2021, and her inclusion in Time 100 in 2023, the list of the world's most influential people. Those recognitions did more than celebrate an accomplished actress. They celebrated a woman who proved that difference is not a barrier. It is a passport to freedom. Salma Hayek has never tried to become the symbol of any single community. But through what she has endured and dared to confront, she became a symbol for everyone who has ever been dismissed simply for being different. Her story stands as a reminder that culture only changes when someone dares to walk first, even if that path is meant for them alone. At 59, Salma Hayek doesn't hide from time. She dances with it. In Magic Mike's Last Dance 2023, she portrayed a woman who had lost faith in her own body, only to rediscover joy from within. For her now, cinema is no longer a place to prove she's still desirable. It's where age itself becomes beauty. Gone are the tears of fear from that vulnerable day filming Desperado. Today, she stands at the center of the frame, calm, fierce, radiant, like someone who has fought 100 battles and no longer needs anyone's permission to shine. Off-screen, she turns the camera toward real life. Her 20 million Instagram followers don't come to see perfection. They come to see a woman unafraid to show gray hair, a bare face, or a body softened by menopause. She says proudly, "I accept my body because it has protected me from all the wounds of life." Every morning, she meditates, practices acro yoga to keep her joints strong, and lives without Botox, without hair dye, without changing anything except her own strength of spirit. Though married to a billionaire, Salma remains fiercely independent. No prenuptial agreement, no dependence. Pinot calls her work ethic the most attractive thing about her. And Salma believes love means lifting each other up, not leaning on one another. Together with her daughter Valentina, she dreams of future creative projects, as partners who love and respect each other equally. When she steps away from Hollywood's spotlight, Salma devotes herself to another mission, changing the world beyond the screen. As a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, she has traveled across the Middle East and Africa to support refugee children, founded funds to aid women suffering from violence, and raised relief for Mexico after natural disasters. She rarely speaks of these things because, in her words, giving is the most beautiful kind of silence. The Salma Hayek of today has nothing left to prove. And yet, it's precisely now that the world sees her truest beauty. A woman at peace with age, loyal to her essence, and blazing with a light no prejudice can ever extinguish. Salma Hayek has traveled a long road, from the small Mexican girl once deemed unfit for Hollywood to the woman who made Hollywood change to fit her. Every step forward came at a cost: loneliness, quiet breakdowns behind closed doors, tears no one ever saw. Yet through it all, Salma stood tall, shining in a way that no one else could define. She never won through luck. She won by constantly saving herself in a world that once tried to push her aside. From the pain behind Frida, the rejections born of prejudice, to the fear of being forgotten in middle age, Salma turned every scar into a badge of honor for a life lived boldly. Today, as her name gleams on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, people may remember the timeless beauty, the fame, the awards. But beneath all that, Salma Hayek's true legacy lies here. She made millions of women believe that age is not a full stop. It's a comma opening a new chapter. That where you come from cannot hold back a heart determined to rise. That the greatest beauty of a person lies not in what they are given, but in what they have overcome. And perhaps that is why we admire Salma, not because she is perfect, but because she never gave up. The story of Salma Hayek reminds us that everyone carries a silent battle within. So if you ever see someone walking as if they fear nothing, it's probably because they've learned to live with fear and keep going anyway. And if Salma's story made you think of the times you've been quietly strong yourself, share your thoughts for her below. And don't forget to subscribe to join us for more journeys of the proud souls who shine behind the curtain of fame.